Today, we have a special guest joining us, Mark Daniel. Based on the Sunshine Coast in Australia, he is the co-founder of the Real Career Advice and the Highbiz Hub. Mark contributes to several industry magazines and has a daily career advice blog that he publishes to his 40,000 LinkedIn followers. A global resume writer and career coach, Mark is known for his honest, direct, and hard-hitting advice, helping people land job applications and succeed at interviews. With 30 years of recruitment, outplacement, and HR experience, he is here to guide us with his insightful knowledge. He has worked with thousands of candidates and companies, helping them achieve fantastic results throughout the job search process.
Welcome to our podcast, Coast to Coast. We are here on a mission to empower you with cutting-edge knowledge of business, marketing, and digital communications. We want to inspire you with tips to cultivate your skills and strategies to scale up your business. With proven methods that work, you have just landed on your transformative journey with Jacob Dermelkonian.
Welcome to Coast, Mark. Lovely to have you here today. The volume of online job postings dropped significantly since the start of the pandemic and the introduction of COVID-19 related containment measures. We have seen an overwhelming decline in the online advertised jobs in Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and the United States comparing to the beginning of the year. How can we look into this? How do you think the COVID-19 crisis will affect our careers?
Look, I think there's no doubt that the COVID situation has impacted on borders. And when we look at countries like Canada, like Australia, those countries are very dependent on migration. They've got a history of migration. And so therefore, when you close the border, you have a massive effect on that. But already we're seeing that changing dramatically. In fact, only today I was discussing with a client company, a company that I work alongside, and they are now creating a new process and looking at engineers from the UK, from Europe, working with migration agents and identifying people because they're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, but they're also seeing that they have a need. And it's very difficult in the countries that you mentioned to hit those numbers that are required because we have a very limited population. When we look at a country like Australia, it's only got a population of 25 million, of which 13 million are working. And then when you look at those specific skills, and I think what you'll find also is post-COVID, a lot of countries are investing in infrastructure. Yeah, they're investing in infrastructure, they're investing in engine, they're investing in building their own country. But then they realize that they haven't necessarily got the skills that they need. So therefore, they sometimes need to look wider. So the situation in Australia at the moment is there are many opportunities, but there's only a certain resource pool. And I think that's what we're seeing now is yes, there is no doubt that COVID has a massive impact. But equally, I say to people every day, don't put hurdles in your way. Don't create the COVID problem. If there's an opportunity, go for that opportunity. Don't say to yourself, oh, but with COVID, it's going to be difficult. I'll tell you a situation, Jacob, that this year, not this year, in fact, last year, probably in the height of the pandemic globally, I worked with a client of mine in the Falkland Islands, and he was successful gaining a new position in Iceland. And that was in the height. So there is absolutely no reason, even though the pandemic has created issues, there is no reason to make it an excuse. We have to still go for those opportunities. But for every story of that person, who is successfully, in fact, he relocates later this month. So for every story of that person, there's another person in I've got an example also from somebody who worked in Qatar, right? Who worked in Qatar, who's come home to Australia because they were concerned about what the future was going to be and whether they would be able to travel the same way. So they've given up their position because their family. So it's has COVID impacted? Yes. Will it continue to impact? Yes. Is it also a state of mind? Yes. You've got to really, make your decisions for yourself.
So if you want to reflect upon what you have mentioned about the new set of skills required for the new post or during crisis market opportunities, do you believe that COVID-19 crisis had a more adverse impact on the demand for jobs requiring lower qualifications? What's your best advice for new graduates and people who are entering the job market for the first time?
Okay, that's another good question. And I think that the advice that I give to graduates daily is to take it seriously. Take that search, take that application seriously. When you make an application, make a complete application. Don't just have an amateurish resume. Take some advice on your resume. And that doesn't mean come to somebody like me and pay. It means research. Look at what I should be doing. There's plenty of I do some free courses, for example. Look at those courses, prepare your resume, look at the opportunities, and don't be put off, and look at your horizons as well. Look at countries. If it's certain countries, I'm working with somebody at the moment, and they're based in the UK. He's in his final year of engineering. He's originally from Malaysia. Where's he looking to work? He's looking to work anywhere, and he will be applying for opportunities that suit his skills. But it's a matter of people's mindset. Is the people who want something are going to get something, but they're only going to get it by creating momentum. And the phrase that I use all the time is filling the pipeline. If you fill the pipeline with your applications and you're making good applications, and if at the end of the pipeline a negative comes out, right? A negative comes out, i.e. you get a letter or you get an email that says, I am sorry, but on this occasion, you've been unsuccessful. Do you know what? That doesn't matter if there's other applications behind it. It's when people go, oh, I'm going to make this application, I'm going to do everything, and then I'm going to wait. No. Yes, you might wait for it to come out, but what you're going to be doing is filling behind that pipeline all the time with another application. Yeah. You've got to keep going. And, the skills, if we're looking at, let's look at engineering. If someone's just finished their engineering degree or their engineering master's, they have a skill. That skill is still required, but they have to go out and find those opportunities. And they have to apply for those opportunities and apply well and apply consistently and target those opportunities. So they're not saying, oh, please find attached my resume. They're actually saying, these are the skills I can offer. This is what I can do. This is my flexibility. This is how I relate to the job description. This is the benefits I'm going to bring to your company. So you've really got to put some effort into that application.
Yeah, totally correct. Actually, demand for workers in the frontline sectors or those involved in the management of the COVID-19 pandemic increased, but jobs declined substantially in the sectors that had to shut down due to the government-imposed social distancing restrictions, such as leisure and hospitality. With so much uncertainty, what do you think people working in those industries, especially in their mid-careers, should do about it? How can they transition? What can they do? What would be their horizons for the future? Any guidance for these sort of people to maneuver around the situation?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult. Obviously, it's very difficult to give specific guidance, right, without talking about a specific situation. But I think, it's not dissimilar to the situation with the graduate. It is about attitude, but it's also about balancing your applications. So let's look at it. If we've got an A, B, or C list, so my A list has got to be the positions that tick all my experiences and all my previous experiences, my qualifications, my skills, etc. My B list might be, I might tick some of them, but I don't tick all of them. And my C list could be something totally different. Yeah, it could be a transition, a job where I'm transitioning into a different area, or it could even be a bucket list kind of job where, do you know what, I'd really like to do that. So, and I say to people, if that's what you want to do, of course you should try and do that, but you should also balance that with still looking at those positions that meet you, that cover what you've been doing. Because if we just search for our bucket list job, or our job that we're transitioning, or that we want to transfer our skills into, we can end up being disappointed.
Yeah, I cannot agree more. As a matter of fact, I hear a lot of stories about people who actually find themselves stuck in the job they don't really like, or just waiting for the next promotion or the incentive to comfort their frustrations.
And I think sometimes what happens is if people are unemployed or they're without work at the moment, they look at that transfer of skills opportunity, and they're searching for those jobs which most certainly are more difficult to get. When you're not ticking all the boxes, it's more difficult to get those positions. So my view on that is sometimes you need to go sideways to move forwards. So if there's an opportunity that, do you know what, this isn't the transfer of opportunity that I was really looking for, but I'm going to take that job, and then, because the best place to get your next position from is from a job. Yeah. But then what you need to do is you need to set time aside and say, look, I've got the security of my job. I've got a job. I've got income. I'm paying my mortgage. I'm paying my rent. I'm contributing to the family, etc., etc. I've got everything I need, but it's not really what I want to do. Well, exactly. Do your transition, do your transfer to a different sector. Do it from that position rather than do it from a position of unemployment, because a position of unemployment puts so many other pressures on you, and that doesn't matter what country you're in.
Since you've been mentioning a lot about how to deploy the right skills in the right places, do you think that whatever we're witnessing now in terms of remote working practices and the new methods of communications will impact the job skills required to the pre-crisis period, such as technical capabilities versus teamwork and communications?
I think we can see, I think one of the indicators of how there's certain things, aren't there, that are going to stay with us. And I'm not sure whether some of the things that are staying with us are going to stay with us for the best reasons. And in my world, interviews is one of those situations. Interviews always used to be done, well, where possible, always used to be done face-to-face. Always, yeah? Now, it's almost like we have made an excuse of the pandemic to do everything via Zoom or do everything via telephone. And I personally feel that we're losing quality there, where we're losing that connectivity. We're losing that interaction. Are we able to assess somebody as well? Are we really getting to know each other as well in this podcast, with you where you are and me where I am? Or would it be better if we were sat across? It would be better if we were sat across.
Of course, human relations are really expensive.
It is, and we can read each other better, and we can get that kind of sense about each other. And I think therefore in the job market there is a laziness will take over to a degree, and hopefully it might go back at some point. But there is opportunity for candidates in that situation, because there's an opportunity when you're being interviewed via Zoom or something similar, or a similar platform. There's an opportunity to set yourself up properly, to make sure the camera's in the right place, to have the right kind of background.
Yeah, and a lot of technical people have no experience with equipment or hardware. Now they have to be really on top of their game and learn more.
If I'm being videoed for an interview, well, the camera's not going to look at my nose, but the other candidate, the camera will be looking at the nose. It'll show half the head. There'll be the dog will be running around in the background, and all those things. So there are opportunities for people to still to perform well. So I think those things are changing. Certainly, and probably I'm not necessarily in the best position locally, because fortunately, we haven't been impacted greatly. But what I can see is companies going back to working from the office,
Yes, we've seen this in the GCC too.
And I think you can see it with, the leaders like Google. You would think, wouldn't you, that leaders like Google would be continuing with the work from home opportunities, but no, they've gone the other way. They're actually making offices, and they're not having open offices, having, enclosed separate offices and little breakout areas. They're getting rid of the football, the bar football tables and the ping pong tables, and they're getting back to creating places of work. And I just wonder whether that is something we'll see, because let's face it, in the GCC and all over the world, city centres are made up of very expensive real estate. It's also like resumes, isn't it? How long have we had resumes, and how long have we talked about alternative, and how many times have we talked about different ways of interviewing? But still, we make a decision with one person talking to another person, looking at their resume, looking at their cover letter, following up with their referees, and then saying yes. We really haven't done anything different for 100 years, Yeah. And when you really think about it, how are we going to make a difference, And I think that when it comes to people, we're still literally managing people in the same way, but we are replaced. But there's no doubt that some jobs are being replaced by, autonomous offerings. And
Solutions, digital solutions, yeah.
The same here. One of my clients is a big mining company, and all their huge trucks, which carry, tons and tons of coal, for example, do not have a driver. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're operated.
Self-driving cars are coming in big time.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think we're finding things like that changing, and then we've got to look at, what are those people going to do? Where are they going to go? Are they going to be the guy that sits there or the girl that sits there and controls that vehicle from an office in another city, or are they going to do, cross-train into other areas? And that's the same, I suppose. That's what we've got to be careful of all over the world, that automation doesn't take over, employment in such a way that makes people unemployable.
Very true. Certainly, in order to ensure long-term recovery, governments must address pre-existing structural challenges that are likely to accelerate and become more urgent in the aftermath of COVID-19 crisis. How do you think people can get prepared to join the job market again? Do you have any specific advice for those who want to be ahead of their league or just prepare themselves for the new upturn in the economy?
Yeah, I think there is. But you know what? I don't think the advice is any different than I would normally give. And it's about being prepared. I talk to people every day, and, when I say these things, I'm not saying them to sell something. I'm saying it because, I'm the age I am, and I've been doing this for, 35, 40 years. Okay. So that's the reason I kind of give this advice. And the advice is around having your toolkit ready. Yeah. Now, one of the things that when people are prepared, when their LinkedIn profile is really strong, and when people get contacted and they say, hey John, hey Julie, I've seen your details. I'd really like to talk about an opportunity with you. Could you send me your resume? And what do people do? They go, oh, I'll have to put it together. Yeah. I'll have to get it prepared, or can you give me some time? No. And I talk about this regularly. I say to people, if you're driving in your car, you have an up-to-date driving license. And to me, having your toolkit ready, having your resume ready, having your LinkedIn profile correct, having your kind of social resume prepared is as important as your driving license. You wouldn't getting, and that's what I think people need to do. They need to be prepared and they need to be organized. So that's the first thing. The second thing they need to do is have a plan, if it's about job search And if it's about looking for an opportunity, whether they're employed or unemployed, it's about making it into a job. Yeah. So if you were in this situation, Jacob, I would be saying, you have got to be the manager of Project Jacob. This is what you've got to do. And you have to allot a certain amount of time every day to do job search, to do applications, and then you've got to record those applications. I have people who say to me things like, I've made hundreds of applications. And I'll say, how do you know? And they'll say, well, there's a lot. Yeah. I said, well, a minute ago there was hundreds, and now you're saying it's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't keep a record of them. Well, why don't you? Yeah. We can all do a simple spreadsheet, and if we can't do a simple spreadsheet, we can all write in a notebook. If we're applying for positions, we can make a list of the positions we applied for, when we applied for it, because we need to have that. We need to take job search seriously. And it amazes me every single day that people don't take it seriously. I know people, and you'll know people, that have spent more time choosing their new car than than spending on applying for a job. Yeah?
Exactly. Don't you think that people sometimes find it really difficult to create an explicit resume, or tricky to decide when to personalize it to meet the specific job requirements? Any guidance on how to write one that would outshine other resumes and echo the candidate's métiers, qualifications, and skills? Do you think that a resume has to be pre-built irrespective of the job offering, or do you think it should be modified to meet the specific job requirements?
Yeah, I think, look, simple answer. Simple answer is that you need to have what I'm going to call a foundational resume. You need to have a resume that is as good a you as you can be. Because if somebody says to you, Jacob, send me your resume now, yeah, you've got to be able to send them something, okay? And that's the overview of you. If, however, you see a position and you think, I'd like to apply for that position, then yes, you have to be spending some time. And if you can't, and I was literally, prior to speaking to you today, I was talking to somebody and we said, you have to make as much of a tweaks or edits or target your resume to the position that we're applying for. Now, in this case, it was a senior finance role. We've got to make those edits. We've got to make those changes. We've got to create that cover letter. You've got to spend about half an hour, maybe even an hour on that application. But if it takes that long, because when you press the submit button, Jacob, when you press that button that says yes, you've got to be able to say to yourself, you've got to be able to say, do you know what? I'm about to send the best Jacob I can for this position. If you can't say that, then you shouldn't be sending it, right? But if you can say that and you send it, if 3 days later you get a nice email that says, thank you, but on this occasion you've been unsuccessful, then at least you can say, well, I submitted the best me, right? It's those people that don't spend that time that haven't got a right to say that because they didn't put the effort in, And going back to the car situation, people will go and they'll all go and do different comparisons. They'll read, they'll read reviews on cars, etc., etc. Then they'll go and choose the car. Well, think of it as you. What can I do? What can I do to improve it? So with a resume, there's certain areas, there's certain parts of a resume we can change. So we can always look at that profile and we can say, look, that's my profile. That's who I am. But what are they looking for? And am I missing some things in there? Because I have those skills, but I'm not highlighting them. So my profile section, I can do that. In my duties section, that's very difficult because you can't suddenly say you do something different than what you do. Yeah. So there's that historic element of a resume, but then there's also the achievement section. And sometimes you can think to yourself, okay, part of this job description, so let's look at that finance manager. The finance manager said part of the job description was that they were looking for somebody to implement some cost-saving initiatives. Yeah. So what we want to be able to do is in an achievement is give a demonstration of how I implemented or he implemented cost-saving initiatives and what the result of that was. Yeah, so there's always something you can do, but you have to have that foundational resume there as your basis to work with. But,
Right. So, for instance, if someone was shortlisted for an interview and he wants to prep How can you make sure that the person being interviewed sounds real and not cliche with the answers, to say the least?
It is difficult because one of the things that you're unable to do, isn't it? You can't prepare for every eventuality, because the one thing that we know about interviews is we don't know what they're going to ask us. But there are some things, and I'm not trying. I've written lots of blogs, for example, on interview questions, how to answer interview set questions, etc. But I think there are some nice little techniques that we can use that people often forget about, and they're things like, so if I'm asked a question, let me give you an example. So if I'm asked a question, give me an example of a time when you had to do X, Y, and Z, right? That's a kind of a typical type of interview question. My response to that would be, my first response would be, so if you ask me that question, Jacob, my first response would be, oh, that's a great question, Jacob. Let me have a think about that for a moment. Okay. I think what I would do, Jacob, is I would do this, I would do that, and I would do the other. And I'd probably explain a little bit there. But at the end, what I would be saying to Jacob is I'd be saying, Jacob, does that cover what you're looking for? Then you would turn around and you'd say, Mark, no, that covered everything. So I'd feel good. Yeah. But if you didn't say that, you might say, no, actually, that was a good answer, but could you expand on certain part of it? I'm now able to expand on that. But what I did in that example was at the beginning, I complimented you by saying, hey, that's a good question. Let me think about that for a moment. That you're good. Yeah. Then I gave you the answer. So rather than just saying that's my answer, I said, does that cover what you're looking for? And you then said, oh no, that was fantastic, Mark, thank you. Or you said, actually, could you expand a bit more on why? So there are all sorts of techniques you can use that actually can help you overcome on some occasions your lack of knowledge. Because let's face it, there are people who do well at interview who aren't necessarily the best candidate.
Any final words for people to empower and motivate them and put them on the right track in their job search this year?
I suppose, it's kind of going back on quite a few things that I've said, is have a plan, get organized, get support from if you have a partner or a husband or a wife, get their support. Allot some time. So another example I could give you was I was working with a client in Glasgow in Scotland, and this wasn't about interviews. This was about he wanted to partake in an MBA. Okay. And he was full-time employed. He's got a wife. He's got 2 children. And he was worried about impacting on, how he was going to do his work, i.e. his MBA. And to me, that's a bit like, how are you going to do your job search while you're still doing those things? And what we came up with for him was, we identified that there was a library in Glasgow that he could go to every Tuesday night and every Thursday night for 2 hours. And what he managed to do then is he managed to go to work, and then after work, take his laptop into his library, which was away from home. He didn't have to worry about the kids, and he managed to find time to do his studies. So that could be doing his time for his job search, creating his resume, making applications. And then 2 days later, he did the same, but he was never taking that work home with him. It wasn't impacting on the family. It wasn't causing any disruption, but equally, and more important, I think, because this is my world, is I know that if he was job searching, that he had those 2 hours to make a difference to his life and to his career. And where if he'd gone home, then he might have had to look after the kids, and he might have had to, answer a phone call, or, his wife had to go somewhere. So and that would disrupt the process. But by spending some allotted times, you're able to do it. So my view on what are we going to do if we want to make a difference this year is get organized, look at your
do that kind of draft of your resume, share it with people you trust and respect, yeah? But ask them for constructive criticism. And sometimes don't ask your partner. Ask people outside of that. And I'll give you an example, Jacob. And this is a true story. A year ago, I went to the doctor. And the doctor said to me, Mark, you need to lose some weight. I was 108 kilos, okay? 108 kilos. So it's quite heavy, isn't it? Right? Yeah. And the doctor said, you need to lose some weight. You're 108 kilos. You're morbidly obese, right? So that's what he said to me. That's what the doctor said to me. I came home. I said to my wife, she said, how do you get on the doctor? I said, I'm morbidly obese. I'm 108 kilos.
She must have said you're perfectly fine.
Yeah. And my wife said, you're perfect. Take no notice. Yeah. Right.
Well, it sounds like your wife really loves you. She puts you on a pedestal. That's positive, you know. That's great.
I know. And this is the example. And the example I have so many times is people say, I showed my resume to my wife, or I've showed my resume to my husband. I showed my resume to my partner, and they think it's great. And I go, they're wrong. Yeah. It's not great, but they think it's great because they think you're great. Yeah. And there's a big difference. So I think people, where possible, should be taking advice, and take advice from people you respect, and reach out to people. You know, don't be afraid of asking a recruiter and saying, what do you think of this? Don't be afraid of asking a company and saying, what do you think of this? Don't be afraid of asking one of your LinkedIn connections or a work colleague to say, what do you think of this? And when they say it's great, challenge them on it. And when they say it's rubbish, challenge them on it. You know, because it's those things to me that are so important, and it really helps you. You know, it can help you feel really good, or it can help you, you know, make it better. You know, and there's so many resources out there, you know, that will really help. I've got free courses that people can work through to create that great new resume, because I know that there's people out there all the time, every day, wanting advice. And I think that's important, is we should be able to reach out and we should be able to get that advice. And in today's day and age, you know, it's easier to get that advice than ever. But equally, you've got to have some sensibility, and you've got to check, you know, kind of check yourself. Is the advice I'm being given correct? You know, which advice is right? You know, because there's a lot of people giving, you know, some pretty poor advice. And I'm sure you found that in your world as well.
Thank you so much, Mark. We hope it was of great value to our listeners, and look forward to having you on the show again.
Yeah, I look forward to.
Thank you for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this episode from Coast to Coast Podcast. For more resources and access to episodes which will help you find real marketing success, visit www.jacobinternationalgroup.com. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and stay connected on all our social media accounts.